Physicians are among the highest earners in the country. So, why do so many of us feel financially behind? Keep listening as I unpack the hidden money traps affecting lots of doctors, from lifestyle inflation to debt comparison, poor financial advice, etc., with one of my colleagues, James. We talk about why earning more doesn't automatically create peace and the mindset shifts required to build real wealth, and how to move from stressed high earner to intentional wealth builder. If you've ever wondered why money still feels hard despite your income, this episode is for you. Hello, and welcome to the Wealth Minded MD podcast with your money best friend. I'm Dr. Lisha Taylor, and of course, I'm here to help you build wealth and make good money decisions so you can create the life you desire with more control over your time.
Lisha, can we talk about one of the most important money moves we've made as doctors? And I don't know about you, but for me, when I think about this, it's actually insurance. Yes, I know it's not sexy, but it is absolutely essential, especially disability insurance.
Facts. I got mine right after med school, before residency even started. And let me tell you, Prati Botto at PKA Insurance Group made the whole process so smooth. He actually cared, broke down everything, explained the fine print, and got me the best policy for the best price.
And what I love is that he treats everyone like that, residents, attendings, even docs on visas. He literally got you. He's super responsive, super knowledgeable. And if there's a better deal out there, he will tell you.
Oh, and if you're healthy, you could get approved for up to 10 million in life insurance, so not just disability insurance, in only 5 minutes. No labs, no hassle.
So if you're serious about protecting your income and your family, call 1-800-258-1018.
Or email pradeep at pkainsurance.com. All right. In terms of life updates, as I'm recording this, I am making plans for Memorial Day, and I have some hotel credits that need to be utilized before the end of June on a couple of my credit cards. And so I figured, okay, why don't I utilize them for a fun trip on Memorial Day? And so I have decided to go to Vegas. I've been to Vegas maybe 2 or 3 times in the past, usually for very fun reasons. Once was like one of my girlfriend's birthdays. Another time I actually went when I was covering sports medicine. I was covering the LA Lakers. And so that was a really fun experience. And so I'm excited to go back. I have never been around Memorial Day, and hopefully I'm going before it gets too hot and unmanageable. But I am excited to go. I love sports. And so I'm hoping to catch a WNBA game while I'm out there. Maybe I'll go to a concert or a show at the Spheres. We'll see. But I am excited to spend Memorial Day weekend in Las Vegas. As I mentioned, I had some hotel credits that I needed to utilize. So the hotel credits I'm talking about are the ones on my American Express personal platinum and business platinum cards that essentially give you $300 off a night for a hotel stay. And so I was like, oh my goodness, along with that huge discount, you also get like $100 property credit, and you also get free breakfast for two. And so it's just like, okay, I have this credit, I'm going to use it. Now, one could say I don't actually have to use the credit, and that by utilizing the credit, I'll probably spend way more on a trip to Vegas. But that is okay. Life is meant to be lived. And so I've decided to go to Vegas. Super excited to go out there, to walk the strip, catch some shows, catch a game, eat some good food, and just kind of like escape. Life has been stressful for me. Several people that I'm close to have had some unfortunate health challenges. And so just being able to get away, and even if it's just for a long weekend, would be good. So, yes, sometimes I complain about too much travel. And this is one of those times where I'm actually excited to travel. And so I have decided to go to Las Vegas, and I will kind of update you on how that goes. All right. For financial focus this week, I thought that I would replay an interview that I actually did with James. And so James is a financial advisor, but him and I had a conversation on his own podcast about some of the unique challenges that physicians face. In this conversation, we dive into the surprising reality that a lot of high earning physicians still feel financially stressed despite, our high incomes, and like why that is. We talk about how medical training often leaves doctors with very little financial education and a lot of debt, and how we tend to handle that, and how maybe we should try to start handling it from now on. and we challenge the idea that wealth is about salary or net worth. And we kind of talk about these different other forms of wealth that I believe are also really, really important. And I personally talk about the importance of defining success for yourself and figuring out what it is that you really want. So it's rare that I get a chance to kind of spill my perspectives in an interview format where I'm the one being interviewed, but that's what's happening in this episode. And I hope that you enjoy it.
Lisha, welcome back. Lisha was first on the podcast when I was on financial residency, and now we're just talking about how I actually have my own show. But when you work with physicians, what do you think they misunderstand most about why money still feels stressful, even when they're earning a great income? This happens all the time.
Yeah, I think for a lot of physicians, money can feel stressful for a variety of reasons. I think that some of those top reasons might be one, they've got a lot of debt. And so even though they maybe make a lot more than the average American, they also feel like they have more debt than the average American. And I think
Mm.
that for a lot of people, whenever you have, for example, six-figure student loan debt and maybe a big mortgage and maybe kids that you're contemplating putting in private school and also trying to plan for their college, it can feel overwhelming. And that feeling of overwhelm can oftentimes lead to stress. And so I think one of the reasons that they feel stressed is that they've got a lot of debt. I think the other reason why money can feel stressful is because maybe the amount of money that they have doesn't go as far as they thought it would. When you're making, say, the average American household income of around $60,000 or $70,000 when you're in training, you think to yourself, oh my gosh, I can't wait till I become an attending physician and I'm making multiple six figures per year. Life is going to be marvelous. And then once you get to that point, you see your paycheck and there's a bigger difference between that gross income and that net income. So you realize how much money you're paying in taxes. And then you've realized, oh man, I've got all of these expenses coming my way. And by the time I pay those expenses, maybe I don't have enough left over that I thought I would. Maybe you're living in a high cost of living area and you want to buy a home, but that kind of home you were thinking about costs $1 million and you're thinking to yourself, can I afford that? And so I think that for a lot of physicians, they still feel very stressed about money. Number one, maybe because they have a lot of debt. And number two, because maybe the money that they do have doesn't go as far as they thought it would.
Yeah, it's pretty money or funny. Pun not intended, and we're not going to cut that out. It's pretty funny when, your salary and training is like maybe what you're paying in taxes or maybe
Mhm.
half of what you're paying in taxes now. And that can definitely be like a big awakening for a lot of physician families. So to you, what does being wealth-minded actually mean?
Yeah. So to me, being wealth minded, and I love this question, right? We've got our podcast, Wealth Minded MD. So I love it. And Brittany and I, who's my co host on that podcast, we both think that being wealth minded is actually being someone who is trying to figure out how they can enhance their lives and build more wealth into their lives. And we have to keep in mind that wealth is not just about money, it's not just financial. Sahil Bloom, who's the author of The 5 Types of Wealth, one of my favorite books, really reminds us that there is different kinds of wealth. Yes, there is financial wealth, and we're always trying to increase that. But there is also time wealth. Do you have control over your time? And are you able to spend your time doing the things that are most meaningful to you? So there's financial wealth, there's time wealth, there's physical wealth, right? Are you as healthy as you want to be, as you feel like you need to be? Are you eating healthy? Are you able to work out? Are you getting enough sleep? So there's that physical wealth. If you are not healthy, you will spend all of your time and all of your money trying to get healthier. And so physical wealth, I think, is really important. There's also social wealth. What do I mean by that? That is the kind of wealth that means you have quality relationships that are meaningful to you, whether it is the breadth of friendships that oftentimes you get in school or during training when you're around a lot of people, or the depth of relationships that you develop over time as you're going throughout your life. And so for a lot of folks, it's not just about money, it's about these other kinds of wealth, right? Building in more control over your time, building in a healthier version of you, or at least investing in a healthier version of you, making sure that you've got quality relationships. And so all of these things, I think, kind of play into having a life that you might find joyous or being quote unquote wealth minded. And so for us, it's all about navigating this life and trying to help physicians and other high income earners and professionals that we run into live a life of wealth and wellness, and making sure that that does not just include getting more money.
I love the depth of that variety of types of wealth that you described, because I feel like most people think once they earn X, then they're going to be okay. Then
Mhm.
everything will be good.
Yeah.
Then everything will be better. I mean, I had a goal for the longest time to make six figures, and then I made it. And then it's like, okay, like, what do I do now? What's
Mhm.
next? So
Mhm.
I think for us high achievers, that can definitely be an issue. I'm curious too for a listener right now. Maybe you described those different pillars of life. I forget how many there were, three, four, five, whatever it was. Maybe they're like, okay, that sounds a little overwhelming. Like, I need to get started and I know I need to take care of my health. I don't have a plan for my money. My relationships have been lacking because I just finished training and I haven't had time I skipped all my friends' weddings the last 6 years or
Mhm,
whatever it is. Like,
mhm.
from your perspective, and you've gone through it as a physician, like, where would you start?
Yeah, so I would start, and I tell other people the same thing, whether I'm giving a talk to a group of physicians, I'm speaking at a conference, writing, doing podcasting, or whatever. I always tell people that the first place to start is to define success for yourself. And I always tell this story about how I was a third-year medical student and I was sitting on this old brown couch in my old cheap apartment in medical school. And I was staring at this microwave dinner that I hadn't quite eaten. And I was rocking back and forth trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. I was in medical school. It was time to make a decision on what specialty I was going to go into. And I was always into sports. I knew I wanted just to do sports medicine, but what I couldn't decide is what route am I going to take to get there? Am I going to do orthopedic surgery, which pays a lot of money, or am I going to do primary care sports medicine, which doesn't pay as much? And I was trying to figure out which pathway to go into, which general specialty do I choose? Do I choose family medicine or pediatrics, or do I choose orthopedic surgery? One pays a lot more than the other. One has longer training, but what would I enjoy more? And I was just going back and forth. And I was talking to my dad and I was telling him all of the reasons why I loved family medicine. As you can see, I talk a lot, and I like to develop relationships with my patients. I loved the primary care sports medicine aspect, being able to be on the sidelines of games, but also to, help the athletes with nutrition and exercise and rehab and all of those things. And I liked family medicine more. So I really wanted to go through that path. But I was afraid to make that decision because of the money that I thought I would be losing and how I thought I would look to other people. And at one point, my dad said, Lisha, at some point in your life, you have to define success for yourself and figure out what would make you happy. Because if you constantly try to make decisions based on what is going to look better to other people or what's going to net you the most money, you might find out that you were unhappy in the end. And so I always tell people, start off there. What does success mean to you? Is success to you making as much money as possible, as quickly as possible? No judgment. Just understand, is that what you value most? Or is success to you making a decent amount of money and having time for your family, time for your friends, being able to go on vacation? Maybe it's the time flexibility and the schedule flexibility to pursue some of the passion projects that you've always wanted to get off the ground. But really, it's about defining what success is to you. And so for a lot of people who feel overwhelmed, right? They're thinking, how can I build more time wealth? How can I build more physical wealth? How can I build more social wealth? It first starts off to me about defining what success looks like for you, defining what a happy life looks like for you, and then saying, okay, what are the changes that I could make in my life to sort of get me closer to there? And for some people, it might mean, hey, you need to probably save a little bit more or invest a little bit more. For some people, it might mean you're already making a good amount of money and saving and investing a good amount. Maybe now you can focus on carving out more time in your schedule to go work out and go to the gym. Maybe it's investing a little bit more in your health and maybe getting healthier foods. Maybe it's actually carving out and protecting time in your schedule so you can spend time with your kids at night or go visit your family on the weekends. And so I think it starts with defining what success means to you, what a happy life would look like for you, and then trying to figure out what are at least the small changes that you can make to get you closer to that goal.
I love that. And I've said this on the podcast many times. Psychologists say that one of the number one causes of stress, anxiety, depression is when who you're portraying on the outside is not in alignment with who you are on the inside. And I think doing the deep introspective work to define success for yourself can help you decide how you want to live life versus kind of that like herd mentality. Like it's easy to follow everybody else. It's easy to climb the wrong ladder in life. That's some great fatherly wisdom from your father. If you don't take time to do this now, you're going to look back one day and you might regret your entire existence. I mean, that hits really deep. So in the very, definition of being exceptional means you're being the exception. You're doing different things than the normal. Not everybody sits down and writes out their definition of success. Just curious too, like when someone are even like defining success for themselves, give a couple thought-provoking like prompts or anything to like get them started.
I am not going to reinvent the wheel. I think when I am trying to define success for myself, I go back to where it all started for a lot of people, which is George Kinder and the Kinder questions, right? And so these kind of help you figure out what you want in life. And there are lots of Kinder questions, but if someone is listening to this podcast and they have no idea who George Kinder is or what the Kinder questions are, the three most popular ones are as follows. Number one, if you had all of the money in the world, if money was not a factor to you, let's say you are a billionaire, gazillionaire, how would you want to spend your time? So if money was not a factor, how would you spend your time? That's question number one. Question number two is, let's say you found out that you were unfortunately going to pass away in the next 5 to 10 years. It could be 5, it could be 7, it could be 10 on the dot, but you were going to pass away sometime between the next 5 and 10 years, and you were going to have good health up until that time. What would you do with your time? Would you change anything about the way that you live your life? So that's question number two. And then question number three is, oh my gosh, you got the worst prognosis in the world. You realized that you were going to pass away within the next 24 hours. Is there anything that you would regret about the way that you currently live your life? And I think that when you answer those questions, right, what would I do if money weren't a factor? How would I change my life if I found out I only had 5 to 10 more years left to live? If I found out I was going to die tomorrow, what would I regret the most in my life? I think that really helps to anchor you and figure out, oh, okay, if money weren't a factor, maybe I should try to carve out more time for that now. You know, if I realized that I was going to pass away in the next 5 to 10 years, maybe I do want to focus a little bit more on this thing, right? Because life isn't guaranteed. We don't know what could happen. And if I would really regret not doing this one thing in my life, then maybe I do need to make it more of a priority than I have in the past. And so I think when people are trying to define success for themselves and they're trying to figure out how they want to carve and craft their life, I think answering those three prominent George Kinder questions could be really, really helpful.
I think this is like our fourth podcast today. So the energy is stratosphere right now. I love it. I absolutely love it. And that's been one of my favorite exercises, like kind of like that write your eulogy today type thing. Like, what would you want people to say about you? And they're probably not even going to remember, like, I don't, James's podcast probably won't even be mentioned in my eulogy, right? So it's, who do you want to be? How do you want to show up to the people that matter in your life? What do you want to do? What do you want to create? Steve Jobs' big thing was like dent the universe, right? And he certainly has done that with all the Apple iPhones and everything like that. But I think that's incredible wisdom. So I think we have early action items for the listener too. I'm all about action. So maybe rewind, hit that little minus 15-second button or whatever it is, minus 30, and get out a pen and a piece of paper and write down, answer some of those questions and come up with your definition of success. And it could be, 1 or 2 sentences. Core values is another great thing to do as well. We've talked about that on this show too, but thinking about what are your top 3 to 5 values and what are your family's top 3 to 5 values as well. How would you say a physician training shaped the way doctors think about money for better or for worse?
Wow, that is a loaded question. I think it gives us a lot of different thoughts. Probably like how long you spent in training and what you spent your training doing is going to kind of shape those thoughts and people's thoughts about money. But I will give you some of the things that I'm thinking off the top of my head. Number one, I think that unfortunately we do a disservice to our physicians in training by de-emphasizing the role that money plays in our career. A lot of people are kind of taught that being a doctor is a calling and working in medicine is a calling, and that as long as you are working, you'll be fine. Don't worry about the money. Don't worry about the student loans. Maybe that was true back in the day, but I think things have changed now. So I think we really do ourselves a disservice by de-emphasizing the importance of money and not really helping our physicians really understand the role that that will play, whether that comes into what specialty you choose. I'm not saying you should choose a specialty based on money, but I am saying that if you like 2 specialties equally, maybe it might be worth it to choose the one that's a little bit more higher paying, to think about the way you do training. Not every fellowship is going to net you more money on the back end. And so understanding the cost, not only the financial cost, but the opportunity cost of more education. I think a lot of physicians are not taught the importance of negotiating. So when you finish your training and you're starting your first job, we oftentimes don't understand the importance of negotiating a bigger offer, not realizing that the salary you start off making is going to kind of dictate your pay raises going forward. And so really making sure that folks are thinking about negotiating. I think the role of debt is a huge one. A lot of physicians nowadays are graduating with 6 figures of student loan debt. I think I saw the other day, the average medical school graduate has over $200,000 of student loan debt. And although a lot of physicians are able to get some of that debt forgiven through the public service loan forgiveness program and other loan forgiveness programs, that does not apply to everybody. And you still have to make payments during that time. And so I think a lot of physicians have a lot more debt that they are trying to climb themselves out of. And so unfortunately, we're not taught a lot about money or business in training. Some physicians might work in academics because it's all that they've known, and they may not realize all of the other avenues available to them and all of the other different ways that they can make money and leverage their MD degree to their benefit. Yes, that might mean working with patients, but it could also mean a leadership role at a different institution. It can mean doing some locums work. It could mean telemedicine. It could mean working in pharmaceuticals. It could mean working in the corporate space and just leveraging your knowledge in that arena as well. And so I think there are different ways that we can utilize our skill set to our advantage, but it takes you being willing to have a business mind. It takes you being willing to think outside of the box. It takes you being willing to plan in advance. It takes you making a commitment to yourself that you're going to invest in your own financial future. So very long-winded way of saying, I think that our training kind of shapes a lot. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of that is more negative because physicians aren't taught a lot about money during their training.
I'd be curious too, because we definitely have some families that we work for that are proactive and they want to make good choices with their money,
Mhm.
but they want nothing to do with actually, like, they probably don't even listen to this podcast, you know? So what advice would you give to those? Would it be like finding a team or going through a program like what you guys have, or what would be your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think one, it takes you saying, I want to do something a little bit different, right? I got to do what others won't so I can get what others can't. And so, what does that look like for me? For some people that are very financially minded, it might mean, oh, I need to take a look at my investments, making sure I'm investing 20% or whatever, whatever. But for other people, they're like, hey, Lisha, this is important to me. This matters, but I don't have that skill set. I'm not confident in this area. And I'd rather just outsource it and have somebody take care of that for
Yeah.
me. And I don't think there's anything wrong with paying for help, especially for help in an area that you are not as strong in. But I do think there is something to be said about educating yourself and at least knowing a little bit so that you can evaluate if at least the person you've hired is doing a good job. And so
Amen.
that may not mean taking a whole course on finance or going to a 5-day conference on finance, but it could mean committing to what we call CFE, right? Continuing financial education. Just like you got CME, continuing medical education credits that you got to get each year, maybe you do a little CFB as well. And maybe for you, that is, all right, I'm going to listen to one podcast a month for 30 minutes. Or it might be, I'm going to pick one book that other people have recommended and I'm going to try to get through that one book. It might mean, okay, I am going to meet with my financial advisor once a quarter and I'm going to ask him or her, hey, can you give me some semblance of like how my portfolio has increased over time? Can you let me know and be transparent about any fees that I might be paying to you? Can you help me know how we might change things going forward? Are we on track for me to retire when I desire for me to have the money that I need to pay for my kids' college, right? Maybe for you, it's just meeting with your financial advisor and making sure that you are aware of what's happening with your money. But I do think that there is this saying that no one's going to care more about your money than you do. So you got to kind of take onus in this area. For some of us, it means I'm going to do things myself because I feel like I'm able to do things myself. But if you're not to that point yet, just trying to get a little further along. You know, I think for physicians, there's like 3 groups of doctors. There's that first group of doctors that know very little about finance and have very little interest in finance.
Hmm.
There's the middle group of doctors that know a little bit about finance, right? They know more than maybe they give themselves credit for, but they don't feel confident that they can manage things on their own.
For
Then there
sure.
are the DIYers, right? The do-it-yourselfers who are managing things themselves, educating themselves, and feel like they're in a good position. I would love for everybody to be in Camp 3, but I am realistic in realizing that everybody does not want to be in Camp 3. So my goal is just to say, can we move you from Camp 1 to Camp 2, right? Can we move you from somebody who knows very little to somebody who at least knows a little bit? And each year you commit to learning a little bit more. I'm not saying you need to know what expense ratios are and how to evaluate portfolio performance and all of this stuff. That would be great. I would love to get you there. But for me, it's just like, okay, let's just commit to learning a little bit. Let's just commit to learning a little bit, whether that's one book, one podcast a month, right? Meeting with your financial advisor, talking to some of your colleagues, being transparent about things and not being embarrassed. One thing I tell physicians all the time is like, you are smart. It takes a very smart person to get through medical school. So regardless of whether you think that there are people that are smarter than you in this world, you are intelligent. And so if somebody is telling you something that you don't understand, it's probably because they did not explain it well. Right? It is not
Mm.
on you. And so being willing to ask the questions, even if you feel like, man, this is a dumb question. Sometimes I'll preface it, hey, this might be a dumb question, but can you clarify for me? Or I just want to make sure I understand. Is this what you're saying? Being willing to kind of advocate for yourself and speak up for yourself so that you can make sure that you get the clarity you need to be able to move forward.
So much wisdom in that answer. And just like you, the patient, you diagnose and then you prescribe. I think you can do that with your financial team. You can diagnose your own money situation and figure it out. So I think there's a lot of wisdom wrapped in that. And I appreciate how you answer that as well. What are the most common money mindset traps you see physicians fall into?
Ooh, money mindset traps. It's like money mistakes. Everybody loves this. Like, what are the juicy mistakes that people are making?
The traps.
So, okay, I think there are a few that I see more commonly than the others. Number one is inflating your lifestyle too soon. What you think you can do with a couple $100,000 may be different from in reality what you can do. And so sometimes I think when we as physicians go from making not as much to making a lot more than we ever have in our lives, we might have the temptation of inflating our lifestyle too soon. And it doesn't start off like that, right? It might just be like, oh, my car is old. I want to get a better car. And it might be like, oh, I'm now out of training. Maybe I want to buy a house and I would like to buy a decent sized house, And then we get in groups with our colleagues and we see they're taking international vacations, and we're like, I want to do that too. And you fly business class or first class once and you go, I can't go back to economy. I think for a lot of folks, it might be inflating your lifestyle too soon or overestimating how far your money actually goes. And so making sure that you are having a buffer and leaving a little bit of room for error so that you don't fall into that money trap. So that's number one. Another money trap that I see people falling into is hiring a financial advisor that maybe does not have their best interests at heart.
Oh, this is my favorite. Go down the
I
rabbit hole.
do think that there are financial advisors that set out to do a good thing and help people in great ways. And I do think that those people should be compensated fairly for the value that they bring their clients, full stop. However, I also do think that there are a large portion of financial advisors that are actually salesmen trying to get people to buy complicated financial products that they may not need. And trying to differentiate who the good guy is from the bad guy can be challenging for somebody who does not know as much about money. They will meet with somebody to go, hey, this person has a great personality. They seem great. I'm going to hire this person. And then they don't realize that they're paying higher fees than probably they should because maybe they're not writing the check themselves. The fee is being paid from their investment portfolio, so they don't actually see it. Maybe that advisor's got them invested in some things that aren't really that great. Maybe they're invested in things that themselves also have high fees. Maybe now they bought these complicated whole life insurance, annuity wrap products that the clients themselves don't even fully understand when they've still got 6 figures of student loan debt. And so I think that unfortunately, we've got some bad advisors that are giving subpar advice and overcharging for it. And I think that that is one of the money traps that I see a lot of physicians fall into. And how do you avoid that? How do you get yourself out of that? It starts with educating yourself, right? No one's going to care more about your money than you do. And so what you've got to do is learn how to vet the person that you've hired correctly. And in order to vet them, you have to know what questions to ask. And so that means you've got to maybe listen to podcasts like this. You got to read a couple of books. You got to talk to some people and think to yourself, okay, what are some questions that I can ask so that I can make sure if this person is a good fit for me? Can't just go off vibes, right? You got to actually vet the person thoroughly. And then how can I vet them from year to year and make sure that they still have my best interest at heart? Some of those questions might be, how are you paid? Making sure that the advisor that you hire is coming up with a plan that is tailored to you. So your advisor should be asking you what your goals are, when you want to retire, what are your money priorities, and helping you reach your goals instead of giving you a cookie cutter generic plan that may not be as applicable to you. You want to make sure you've got an advisor who has worked with people in your profession or who make as much money as you do, right? The strategies that we might give someone who makes $60,000 a year is very different from the strategies that we might give someone who makes $300,000 a year, right? And so making sure that you have an advisor who's used to working with people like you. If you've got student loan debt, do you have an advisor who's used to working with people with student loan debt? Is your advisor able to clearly articulate to you how your portfolio has increased in value over time and how that compares to the market and how they have your money invested in what your asset allocation is? And so some of these things, in order to ask these questions, you got to kind of educate yourself. But I do think that probably the second most common money trap that I see a lot of physicians fall into is hiring a bad financial advisor. And some of the other ones that I won't harp too much on is not protecting themselves with the insurance. Maybe they got insurance that they don't need in some areas and not enough insurance in other areas. And so not protecting themselves adequately or not advocating for themselves, whether it's a negotiation gone wrong or a different career move. And so, I think inflating their lifestyle, hiring a subpar financial advisor, not protecting themselves and not advocating for themselves are some of the money traps that I see a lot of physicians kind of fall into.
Definitely. And I feel like you might tell your patients, or like if a family member of yours was sick and seeing a doctor, you tell them to be their biggest advocate. And I think you have to be the same about your money. And I'm so happy you brought up the financial advisor one, because I talk a lot about that on this podcast, but they're probably sick of me talking about it. So it's good to hear from an outside source. I think that might be one of the biggest. And, there's often sales quotas involved. Anyways, you explained it very well. Everyone's heard me talk about it. I don't need to go down the rabbit hole. But like Lisha said, ask great questions. Don't go solely on vibes. There's a lot of great people that work for a company that might have a sales quota that they have to meet every single year. So look out for that as you go forward. So let's move now into how does comparison, or like what I like to call the Insta Joneses, keeping up
Mhm.
with the Joneses of Instagram, lifestyle peers, social media, quietly sabotage financial confidence from your perspective?
Ooh, I think when we are constantly looking at other people, it changes our definition of enough.
Hmm.
What we feel like we need to be happy, what we feel like we need to be satisfied. And as the saying goes, happiness lies in the gap between what you have and what you want. So if you constantly want more, right? If your list of wants continues to grow and your list of wants is so much more than what you have, it's kind of hard to be happy and to feel satisfied. And so I think one of the things that we have to do is kind of anchor ourselves in our own definition of enough and say to yourself, you know what? I'm okay if you make more money than me doing something that I don't feel is right for me. I'm okay if you have more. And I think it takes a lot of soul searching to kind of get to that point. I'm okay if you have a better car. I'm okay if you have a bigger house. I'm okay if you take more vacations than me. Do I want to take a vacation? Yes. Do I want to have a nice car? Yes. Do I want to have a decent house? Yes. But I understand that there's always going to be somebody that has more money, has a bigger house, has more money in their wallet, has kids that go to a fancier school and all of those things. And I am okay with that. It's being able to look at somebody, have a different life than you, make more money than you, and say, that is okay for them. I am happy with what I have. And once you are able to do that and anchor yourself on what your definition of enough is, what your definition of success is, what your definition of a happy life is, then I think you are less likely to fall into that trap of comparison and more likely to kind of be okay with where you are. And then you can say, all right, I have confidence in myself. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know about you, but I run into people all the time and they just have this confidence about themselves. They never seem embarrassed about anything, right? They just kind of walk into a room and they're able to navigate that room seamlessly. And I'm thinking to myself, I think that that confidence kind of comes from experience. That confidence comes from being okay with who they are and what they have and not being embarrassed of it. To answer your question, I think we get more financial confidence the more that we know and educate ourselves. We are less likely to fall into the trap of comparison when we anchor ourselves in what our definition of enough is and what our definition of success is.
And I would add to that every definition, and you said it, of enough and success, it has to be individual. It can't be
Mhm.
somebody else's. That's like the sheer definition of the question. You can't have someone else's definition of enough. You need a definition of your own. And why do you feel like so many physicians feel behind? I know that's a constant, no matter how much they earn. It's like a constant, almost like hamster wheel rat race.
You know, as I was mentioning earlier, I was thinking about the times in my life where I felt behind. I think maybe we have a vision of what our life is going to look like when we get to a certain stage, and we can feel behind if our life doesn't look like what we envisioned.
Definitely.
This goes back to like, you know, being in your 30s, like I'm in my 30s and I don't have kids, right? And so I could feel behind because I thought maybe I'd be in my 30s and I have kids already, right? And so there's that sort of feeling. Or, you know, from a money perspective, it's like maybe I'm making, I don't know, $200,000 a year, but my peer is making $300,000 a year. And so I feel behind. Or maybe it's, oh, I thought that by this stage in my career, I would have enough to retire and I'm not quite there yet. And so I think it's like having mismanaged expectations or mismatched expectations of where we thought we would be at a certain point. And I think for a lot of us, we have to give ourselves some grace and say, you know what, life isn't perfect. We've all had battles and obstacles that we've had to climb and overcome, and that is okay. And we've got to kind of stick with our plan to get through it. For some of us, we had a lot of student loan debt. And so you might be quote unquote behind because you are comparing yourself to somebody who didn't have the level of debt that you had. Maybe somebody else feels behind because they're in a lower paid specialty, right? And so they're not making as much. And so they don't feel like their money goes as far. Maybe somebody else feels behind because they're living on a high cost of living area. And so even though they make a decent amount of money, they feel like they're using all of their money in taxes and rent and housing and those kinds of things. And so I think it can be easy to feel behind when you feel like the life that you want does not match the life that you have. And I think the remedy for that is to being grateful for what you have. I know that sounds cliche, but whenever I anchor myself on gratefulness, like there are people that have more money, that have more things, but I am grateful that I have good health, that I have a decent career, that I have enough money to live a decent quality of life. When I anchor myself on gratefulness and saying like, okay, I don't have all that I wanted at this point, but I do have a lot. When I anchor myself on gratefulness, then I kind of correct myself and I stop feeling behind and I start to appreciate where I am.
Do you have a gratitude practice that you do daily?
That is a great question. I am Christian. And so each morning I try to like read my devotional. I think that helps to anchor me as I start my day. I'd like to say that I, anchor myself in gratefulness in the evening, but sometimes I'm tired and my head hits the pillow before, I finish that practice. But what I used to do was try to name 3 things that I'm grateful for at the end of each day.
I love
Because,
that.
then if I've had a stressful day, when I say, okay, well, I'm grateful that I had good health and I'm grateful that I got home without too much traffic and I'm grateful that the paycheck hit my direct deposit on time, then all of a sudden I'm less angry, less stressed, and a little bit happier. So try to start my day really well, read my devotional, and then at night try to, if I can remember, to say a few things that I am grateful for. And I also think that it's helpful to talk to people who don't have as much as I have. Sometimes I'm constantly surrounded by doctors and doctors who do very, very well, which is great. I have an awesome friend circle, is very successful. But I think
For
sometimes
sure.
I can live in my bubble of doctors and I can forget, like, oh, Lisha, like the average person is not making multiple 6 figures a year.
Right.
You are doing better than you think. Like, let's get a dose of reality. So I think it helps me sometimes to maintain friendships with people that are in different tax brackets and in different stages of their lives, because then I think it does kind of help ground me a little bit.
Yeah, grace and humility comes into play too. And I'm the same way. Everything productive that I need to get done happens between like 6 a.m. and 4 or 5 p.m. Gratitude journaling at night, things like that. I've tried doing it and just doesn't happen. But
You're tired.
I save it for the morning. I reflect on my previous day and just
Mhm.
write down like 5 things I'm grateful for. But I do feel like gratitude can, like you said, it sounds cliche, but there's no doubt that it can ground you and help you be more present.
Mhm.
And also like try to create that little vacation state of mind. Like, what are things that you naturally do on vacation that you can bring to your everyday life? Like just going for a simple walk or just doing like simple things to slow life down, because us as high achievers, we don't slow down very often. I often hear from physicians, and then I want to get into some more like actual practical action items and advice from you after this. But oftentimes, doctors, they either say it to me or a lot of times they're thinking in their head, but they don't say it. Like, as it relates to the money, like, I should know how to do this.
Mhm.
I'm a doctor. I should know how to do this. I'm smart. I'm talented. How does that identity get in the way of asking for money help? And what advice would you give to someone who's thinking that way?
Yeah, I think that mindset holds us back. Whenever you think, oh, I should know this, you're shitting yourself to death. And I think that it can only lead to maybe negative things and negative thoughts. So I think it's all about giving yourself some grace in this moment. And you can even acknowledge it, right? Sometimes I'll just put the elephant in the room out there. I'll state the elephant in the room and say, you know what? I know that I probably should know this, but can you remind me? And then I'll state my question,
Hmm.
right? So then I'm just like
Hmm.
putting myself out there. Hey, I might ask a simple question, but can you clarify this one thing for me? So sometimes I think it's like having the reframe and having the words that you can utilize in those moments. But I think it's also giving yourself grace and saying, you know what? Maybe I should know this thing, but I don't right now. And I am not going to let this stop me from moving forward. And just being able to say, you know what? I'm going to be humble in this moment and maybe admit that I don't know this thing so that I can get the help that I need. I think sometimes the embarrassment prevents us from moving forward and getting the help that we need and making the progress that we desire, especially when it comes to money. And so being willing to ask questions, being willing to learn, and being willing to kind of put yourself out there and realizing that we all start from the same place. Like, okay, maybe you don't know this one thing about finance, but you probably know 20 million things about science and medicine and being a doctor that maybe other people do not know. So it's like, okay, we all have different lanes. Maybe this isn't your lane right now. Maybe this isn't your area of expertise right now. But I really do think that experience and knowledge breeds confidence. Oftentimes we are not confident in areas that we don't feel as strong, right? We're not confident in areas where we feel like we don't know this thing yet. But the more that you know, the more that you educate yourself, oftentimes the more confident you become. Think about it in medicine, right? You could probably talk about the most common diagnoses in whatever field you're in because you know it so well. So you're confident in your answer. Versus if I had you ask, talk to me about 10 different financial terms and options and puts and all of these things, maybe you wouldn't feel as confident because you don't know as much. And so it's okay. Just recognize where you are and say, what can I do to rectify this? I got to educate myself. I got to ask more questions. I got to do some research. I got to talk to somebody. As you get more knowledgeable, your confidence will improve in that area.
And I would say too, it's no different than paralysis, like a patient sweeping their symptoms underneath the rug and then 5 years later, cancer and they die, whatever it is. Oftentimes I see financial paralysis as well can happen very frequently. So like you said, I think it's good to begin educating yourself and becoming aware that, okay, I need to set my, call it like ego aside, find ways to go find help, whether it's educating yourself, finding a team, doing one of Alicia's programs, like whatever it is. So now I want to just get into some more like practical first steps, some like action items for listeners right now, because we've talked about a lot of the psychology behind medicine and physicians and money and why paralysis happens. But if a physician today they're listening right now, wants to become more wealth minded,
Mhm.
where should they start? What should be their first action item?
Well, selfishly, I'm going to plug myself. Okay. We've
Please
got,
do.
so me, Dr. Lisha Taylor, and my colleague, Dr. Brittany Halford, we have a podcast called Wealth Minded MD. So I would invite you all to listen in. We try to keep it entertaining and educational. We are very transparent about our lives and our money mistakes. I am not married. I do not have children, and she is married with kids. Right. And so I'm telling stories about my dating life, and she's telling stories about her mommy life. But we are both physicians trying to navigate this world and build wealth in the process. And so I think that if you are interested in that sort of thing, if you're a podcast person, check out Wealth Minded MD. I'm a big proponent of books. I read a lot, and some people like reading physical books like I do. Other people are more of an audiobook person, but I do think that there are some really popular finance books that might sort of be a great step to get started. I mentioned Sahil Bloom's book, The 5 Types of Wealth, which I really did love. I also love Morgan Housel. He is a fantastic writer. He's 3 books out, and all 3 of them are great. His most popular book is his oldest one, which is The Psychology of Money. And so I would highly, highly recommend that. If you're a physician, Dim Dolly and the White Coat Investor is a great book. Jonathan Clement's How to Think About Money is a fantastic book. I like Bill Perkins' Die with Zero. I'm just, naming books off the top of
Good.
my head, but these are some of the books that I think if you were committing to reading 1 book per year, they would be a great start. I think going to conferences, having conversations with folks could be really, really helpful. If you would like some one-on-one coaching, I don't advertise it as much nowadays, but I still do it, and Brittany does as well. And so shoot me an email. I'm happy to help you out. You can email me at info@dralishataylor.com or at wealthmindedmd@gmail.com. So our podcast, Wealth Minded MD, just wealthmindedmd@gmail.com. You can just use that one and shoot me an email. We have a program called Boost where we help people and physicians especially navigate the world of entrepreneurship and figure out what might be their passion projects and how can they monetize that and use that and leverage that into another revenue stream. We also have our Negotiate Like a Boss program where we're helping physicians learn how to negotiate better and more efficiently so they can get paid more doing the work that they desire and that is fulfilling for them. We have a debt payoff boot camp and all of these other things, but my main thing is trying to help the most amount of people possible. And so I think starting out with podcasts and books and having conversations with folks is a really great start.
What's one small habit or practice that helps physicians feel more in control of their money? Or maybe even one like weekly money habit that you do that grounds you and keeps you accountable and aware?
That is a great question. So, one of the things that I like to do with money is give. It just grounds me and just makes me realize like I do have enough. I think that when you're giving to somebody else and you're able to enhance their lives, it really does help you kind of rethink your own life and saying like, wow, I thought that I didn't have enough, but I actually do. And I still have maybe more than the average person. And I can really make a dent in their life by giving money away. So I'm a big generosity person and I love to give money away. In terms of a money I think it'd be really helpful. It is committing to saving or investing a certain percentage. I always say, for the most part, try to save and invest around 20% of your take home income, right? And I did not make this up. The popular Elizabeth Warren, the Senator Elizabeth Warren, before she became senator, she was an economics professor in Massachusetts, and she popularized the 50-30-20 rule. So any money that you take home, 50% should be spent on your fixed expenses like your mortgage and things like that and your bills. 30% is discretionary spending on things that might fluctuate from month to month, restaurant spending or entertainment or personal care, that sort of thing. And then the remaining 20% you reserve for wealth building. And so maybe you are using that 20% to save, maybe you're using that 20% to invest. And so whether you do the 50-30-20 rule or not, I think the most important part of that is that 20% for wealth building. And so when you're asking me about a money habit, a money change that people could make, I think it is maybe committing to saying, no matter how much money I make, I'm going to see if I can start carving out around 20% of it to save or invest.
And I'm curious too, and I'm all about automation, right? So you
Mm-hmm.
choose that 20% and turn it on automatically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Curious too, from your perspective, because I have my thoughts on it, but like money rhythms for either a couple or an individual, or maybe you on your own, like how often would you recommend someone like sit down and kind of like review, just have a check-in? Like, here's where we are on our key projects. Here's where we are on our goals. Here's where we are on our cash flow. Here's where we are on our student loans. Like, do you have any thoughts on that? Or do you guys coach on that at all?
Yeah. So I think what works for one person may work a little bit differently for somebody else. Like I might want a check in every couple of weeks, right? Somebody else might be like, oh my gosh,
For
this is too
sure.
overwhelming. And so I think a good middle ground, I try to tell people once a month is ideal, at minimum once a quarter. Like check in and kind of see where you are. The once a quarter kind of comes into play if you are working with a financial advisor. I think it's always great to kind of check in and make sure you're on track for your financial goals. I think that when you are managing money with a partner, man, that can be challenging. And so you got to make sure that you're on the same page, that you've articulated articulated your goals, that you prioritized which goals you're going to work towards, that each person has access to the money as they need it, that you all are investing as a unit. And what does that mean? Which retirement accounts or investment accounts are you utilizing, and how is that money being invested, and what happens if you need it, and those sorts of things. And so managing money with a partner can be challenging. When you're first starting out, maybe it makes sense to meet a little bit more frequently, whether that's every couple of weeks or once a month, just to kind of take inventory of where you are and where you're going and make sure you're still moving in the right direction. Right? It could be, hey, we were moving in this direction and this expense came up, so now we got to rebuild our emergency fund. Or actually our goal is to purchase a house in the next year or so. And so maybe we're saving money for the down payment or saving money for closing costs. Maybe it is, oh, we've just had children and now we need to start these 529 accounts so we can pay for their college, and how are we navigating that? Or we have kids and now we're trying to pay for childcare costs, which can be really expensive. And what does that mean for me and for you? And do we still want to work full time, or do we want to cut down to part time? And do we have student loans, and how quickly do we want to pay those off? And what is our goal there? I think for newer couples who are navigating some of those changes, especially earlier on in your career when you've got so many of those things to balance, checking in more frequently could be helpful. But I do think it's valuable, right? To be able to check in, even if you're not the one paying the bills, right? Understanding how much money you guys are making, where it's going is really, really important. And so having that check-in with your partner can be really vital to that.
The monthly rhythm, I love that. And I absolutely think whether you're an individual or you're married with a partner, just having like a monthly 30-minute touch point with yourself or with each other to go through some of the things Lisha said. I think if you do that for the next 12 months, if you've never done it before, I would ask yourself to think about how different your life could be if you did that, and how less financially stressed you would feel. And how do you help doctors move from reactive money decisions to more intentional money decisions? Because life's so busy, we all react from time to time, myself included.
So I think you've got to build systems that make it hard for you to fail. And so every mistake is usually the result of a missing system. So I think that we do ourselves a disservice when we try to rely on self-discipline and pure willpower. You've got to put systems in place that make it easy for you to make the right decision. I'll give you an example. When I was working in DC, I was also getting my master's degree at the time, and I was at GW, so George Washington University. I was getting my master's in public health, and Georgetown, which is also in DC, didn't have an MPH program at the time. And so I went to GW while I was working there. I was actually working in finance at the time. But anyway, as I would go to class, they had built this new building where they wanted to encourage people to exercise more. And so one of the things that they did, they strategically structured this building so that when you walked into the building, there was this really nice, attractive, winding staircase that was the first thing you saw when you walked into the building. And do you know what happened? More people took the stairs. They actually hid the elevators. So you actually had to do more work to find the elevators than you did just to see the stairs. And so when people would walk into this building, they would see this beautiful winding staircase, and they would see people taking the stairs. And so do you know what your natural inclination was? It was to go
Take the
up
stairs.
the stairs. Yes. And so they motivated people to become more active. And so they put this sort of system in place. They designed the building in a way that made it easier for you to make the right decision. And I think that we have to do the same thing when it comes to our money. It's like, okay, Lisha, I know that I want to save or invest 20% of my income, but every month things tend to come up. Maybe that means changing it and trying to pay yourself first and having that investment money or that savings money taken off the top. And if you can't trust yourself or depend on yourself to do that each month, then it's all about making it automatic, right? Maybe you have 20% of your paycheck go into an entirely different account. Maybe you set up an automatic transfer so that as soon as the money hits your checking account, it is automatically sent to your investment account. So I think if you automate things, right, and you have it come out automatically, it's not reliant on you to make a decision each month, right? It's not reliant on you to want to save each month. It's done automatically. And I think that when we put things on automatic, right, and we put things on auto draft and things like that, it just makes it easier for us to do the right decision, right? We don't have to do any work, and it just happens like that. And so that's one of the things that we can do, is to be more intentional about our decisions. It's create systems and put those systems into place. And one of those systems might be, all right, I'm going to set up an automatic transfer so that a percentage of my money automatically goes to a certain account. Maybe that also means I'm going to talk to my financial advisor, and I'm going to put slotted time on my calendar to meet with my financial advisor. So now I don't schedule anything else during that time. I know way in advance I'm able to meet with him or her and really have this conversation about my money. If you are partnered, whether you're married or dating or whatever the case may be, and you're managing money with a partner, maybe that means, all right, I'm going to carve out time on a Tuesday night or Friday night for a money date and get some good food, come back home. We're going to talk about our finances and see where we are, or however you decide to do it. And so I think one of the ways that we can be more intentional instead of more reactive is like putting some of those systems in place.
One little system too, you talked about like reserving that space for the financial advisor, your spouse or partner. We call it BAM fam, book a meeting from a meeting. So never leave your meeting. I mean, hopefully your financial advisor or team is like leading this and you shouldn't have to, but always book a meeting from a meeting. whether it's your tax team, your advisor team, with your spouse or partner, or even on your own. So if you start doing monthly financial huddles with yourself, just schedule the next. And we always use the acronym HALT. Don't talk about money when you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. We all know how stressful money can be, right? Also, too, if you have a meeting scheduled and someone's burnt the heck out, maybe just simply reschedule it and find a different time that works for you. Also, I was listening to a podcast one time with Rob Dyrdek from the TV show Ridiculousness and all that. He's an automation freak. Like the same person show up to his house every 2 weeks at the same time to cut his hair. So it's just, I mean, not that you need to go to that extreme, but it is like quite interesting, right? The types of things that can happen in your life. You have enough to think about as a physician. Patient lives, patient dies, all the things that you guys are doing. So what areas of your life can you turn on autopilot, whether it's your financial life or whatever it is? So I want to jump now into some of just like our rapid fire closing questions.
Mhm.
You're a very impressive person. I feel like we've talked a lot about like
Oh, thank you.
the families that you help. Well, yeah, I mean, you're a physician, you have the side company, you're an athlete, you were an athlete at Duke and all that cool stuff. So I'd like to hear about like, some things that make Lisha go every single day and some habits that are important to you. What's one, and this doesn't have to be anything money related, totally up to you. What's one daily habit that you never skip?
Ooh, that I never skip. Wow. I don't know if there's a habit that I never skip.
Maybe sometimes.
Okay, all
That's
right.
a
Give me a
hard
little
one.
leeway.
Yeah.
Give me a little
You're
leeway.
like 75% on.
All right. So some of the habits that I hardly ever skip, morning devotional is really important to me. It helps to really set the tone for my day. I have really tried to make a habit out of eating healthier. And so one of the things I will try to do is get my 3 to 5 servings of fruits and vegetables in the morning when I wake up. And I do that through my
Love
morning
it.
smoothie. I have my, frozen fruit, throw in some spinach, a little protein shake, blend it up and drink it. And I know that even if I eat crap the rest of the day, I have gotten my fruits and my veggies in. So I try to do that each morning. I try to do a multivitamin each morning as well. I work out most days of the week. That is a commitment that I've made to myself to sort of maintain my health. And so I'm not what I would call a gym rat, but I guess I'm in the gym for a decent amount. And I've learned to be more efficient in the gym so I don't have to spend hours in the gym because who has time for that? So I would say, my morning devotional, trying to make sure that I'm getting my 3 to 5 servings of fruits and veggies, trying to drink more water and get enough sleep. All of the things that we're all kind of struggling with. It's like, okay, I need to do the basics. So those are some of the habits that I'm trying my best to keep.
Yeah, those morning smoothies are life changing. I've been on those for years. What's one boundary you have that protects your time or energy?
Ooh, one boundary that I have that protects my time and energy, I would say, is a no work on Sundays. No work on Sundays. I'm Christian, so I usually go to church on Sundays most of the time, unless I'm out of town or something. And I've tried to reserve Sundays for my family. So whether that's spending time, with my partner, he's great. Maybe we're watching a movie together. Maybe I'm babysitting my nieces and my nephews, or maybe I'm just watching some basketball. Maybe I'm watching a good movie, but trying to reserve my Sundays and trying my best to not work on Sundays is a boundary that I have set so that I can spend that time with my family.
And many physicians face burnout. I face burnout. My business partner, Jeff, and I, every once in a while joke, like we could just move to the BVIs and, maybe bartend down there or something in the islands. No, I'm kidding. We love what we do, but we've all felt like that pressure. What do you do when you're feeling burnt out? Do you have like a little go-to to help you feel better?
Yeah, I'm trying to put better practices in place. I used to drink a glass of wine and I was like, well, I don't know if I should be medicated with alcohol. So when I'm feeling a little burnt out, I would usually go to the gym. I find putting on some music that I can vibe out to as I am doing something on the elliptical or going for a run or something like that is really helpful. Sometimes I call my girlfriends and be like, hey, y'all, let's go grab dinner. Sometimes I just need a girls' night. And so that is really helpful for me. I love to travel. And so sometimes I'm like, maybe it's time to take a trip. And so I will start planning some cool trip or vacation. But when I'm feeling burnt out, I find usually I need some time with my family, maybe some time to zone out at gym, and maybe, time with friends or on some sort of vacation. So those are some of the ways that I like to kind of deal with any burnout or stress I have.
We don't have to go too far down the rabbit hole, but I know last time we recorded the podcast together, we had a side tangent on like credit card hacks because you're a travel connoisseur. Anything cool recently that you've done or any like one piece of advice for credit cards? I know it could be like a whole podcast, but I learned some things last time we spoke about it.
Yeah. So one piece of advice is to consider not maybe cashing in your points through the credit card portal, but transferring them out to airline partners and hotel partners directly. Oftentimes you can get substantially more value when you do that. Last year I did a lot of travel trips. I went to Japan for 7 or 8 days. And so that was really cool. I went to Greece and Turkey. I went to Jamaica, went to Puerto Rico. went to Costa Rica. So I did a lot of travel.
Nice.
Only a few of those trips did I pay cash for. A lot of those trips I utilized and was able to book using credit card points and finding amazing deals. And so if you book in advance, oftentimes you're able to find these outsized value. Oftentimes when I'm flying internationally, I like to fly business class, but I don't like paying business class prices. Like I'm not paying thousands of dollars for a flight. And so usually I'm redeeming credit card points by transferring them out to various different airlines and finding amazing deals. And so really excited about all the travel that I was able to do last year. I've got some really cool trips planned this year. Yeah, I think my one piece of advice is to consider, instead of cashing your points through the travel portal, is transferring them out directly to airline and hotel partners, because you might be able to get more value.
What credit card do you feel like you've gotten the most value from? And I know it's going to be different for everybody's unique goals, whether it's airline or points or in general. Because I'm dabbling with credit cards right now, trying different ones, seeing what I like. But you also don't want to open up like 30 credit cards at the same time. So
yeah, you got to be a little strategic about it. Different people have different cards that they found different types of value for, and that might vary based on your spend. I don't have children versus people with children. Maybe they spend money on a totally different ways than I do.
For sure.
The cards that I've gotten a lot of value from is the American Express Personal Gold Card, just because it gives you 4 times points whenever you eat out or buy groceries. And I'm like, yes, I spent a ton of money on food. And so the American Express Personal Gold Card is one of my favorites. I think it also gives you 3 times on flights.
Okay.
Decent annual fee, but not the highest premium card. I get a lot of value from that one too. But if you're starting out, I think that's a decent card to consider. I think some of these 2 times cards that give you 2 times points for all of your spend can be really helpful too. I know Built has a 2 times card. Capital One has a 2 times card. American Express has a business version of a 2 times card. And by 2 times card, I mean earning 2 times the points for every dollar that you spend. And so some of those cards could be helpful too. But for me, probably one of my most lucrative points earning cards might be the American Express Personal Gold Card, just because I spend so much money on food.
I love it. I actually did not know that. So that might be the next one that I look into. Appreciate that. A money belief you've had to unlearn.
Ooh, that I can be a good doctor and still care about money, that those things are not mutually exclusive, that I can be a good doctor and still care about money. I can be a good doctor and want to be paid well. I can be a good doctor and still invest. I can be a good doctor and still want to retire early. I can be a good doctor and still want to work part-time. And I think that is summarized by saying I can be a good doctor and still care about money and still think about finances.
I love that you own that statement. And then finish the sentence. Last question we always ask. A life well lived means in this season of life for you.
Ooh, a life well lived means that I have done work that I have found meaningful and that I have invested in quality relationships.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. An action item to our listener who's with us right now. Think of this whole podcast. Maybe you're taking notes. Maybe you're out on a run. Maybe you're getting after it at the gym. Thank you for bringing us to the gym or on the run with you. We appreciate it. What are your top 1 to 3 action items from today? And what do you want to take? What's the number one? And take action in the next 24 hours. Lisha, thank you so much. Your work is extremely valuable. I feel like we have so much alignment in philosophies that we have on money, which is why we've been working for like 6 months to get Lisha back on the show. She's too busy traveling. No, I'm totally kidding. Totally kidding. You live such a fun life, but I feel like you're very intentional about everything, very confident in how you show up and bring a ton of energy. Where, I know you've already plugged yourself, but where can people find you to learn more?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram at Dr. Lisha Taylor. Also, our podcast has an Instagram page, so Wealth Minded MD. Our podcast, Wealth Minded MD, you can check that out as well wherever you get podcasts, whether it's Spotify, Apple, or what have you. If you have a question, feel free to email wealthmindedmd@gmail.com or info@drlishataylor.com. So thank you so much for having me, James. I really do appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for being here.
All right, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed that conversation that I had with James. And now we will get into some fun money. All right. In terms of fun money, what am I spending my money on for fun? Well, my friends keep getting pregnant. And so I am buying some baby shower gifts. One of my really close friends from residency is having a baby. And I realize I've said that probably 5 or 10 different times because that is what it seems like is happening. Like literally every one of my close friends from residency is popping out a baby. No shade. I'm happy for them that they are expanding their families. Their kiddos are cute. So I love it. But it does mean that I get invited to a lot of baby showers. And this one is no different. And so I am going to buy a baby shower gift. Haven't quite decided what I'm going to buy that's on the registry or if I'm just going to do something off the cuff. We will see. But yeah, I am going to support my friends and her soon-to-be bundle of joy. So that is something fun that I'm doing with money. This is your reminder to also do something fun with money. Thanks again for listening, and I can't wait to come back to you again next week.
Hello, everybody. It's me, Brooke. I'm recording a little disclaimer for my mommy, Dr. Brittany Halford, and her friend, Dr. Lisha Taylor. Just so you know, they're not financial advisors, tax professionals, lawyers, or financial planners. Everything you hear is for education and entertainment. It's not strict financial advice, So use your best judgment, chat with a tax professional, and all those other people that you need to talk to. Thanks for tuning in today. Keep cruising on your journey to wealth and wellness. Bye-bye.